10 million people. That is the lowest estimate. Men, women, and children. Killed, starved, mutilated, or worked to death under the direct orders of one man. A man who never once set foot on Congolese soil. A man who sat in his palace in Brussels, signed the paperwork, and watched the money arrive. His name was King Leopold II of Belgium, and for over 2 decades, the world called him a hero. It is 1884. The major powers of Europe, Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, have gathered in Berlin for a conference that will decide the fate of an entire continent. Africa is being divided like a map spread across a dinner table. No African leader is invited. No African voice is heard. In a matter of months, borders are drawn, territories are assigned, and a king with no army large enough to conquer anything walks away with the largest prize of all, a territory 76 times the size of Belgium itself. Leopold called it the Congo Free State. Free for whom? That question would take 2 decades and 10 million lives to answer.
Leopold II had wanted a colony for most of his adult life. He studied the Dutch model in Indonesia. He examined Spain's holdings in the Pacific. He wrote to his advisors in 1877, "I do not want to miss a good chance of getting us a slice of this magnificent African cake." That sentence tells you everything about what came next. But Leopold understood something critical. Raw ambition needed a mask. So he built one carefully. He founded the International Association for the Exploration and Civilization of Central Africa, a name engineered to sound like a charity. He invited explorers, missionaries, and politicians to Brussels, and spoke with genuine-sounding passion about ending the Arab slave trade in Central Africa, about bringing medicine and education to the people of the Congo Basin. European newspapers praised him. The United States became the first major power to formally recognize his claim. To survey and secure the territory, Leopold hired Henry Morton Stanley, the most famous explorer alive at that moment. Stanley traveled deep into the Congo Basin and negotiated hundreds of treaties with local chiefs. Most of those chiefs could not read the documents they were signing. The treaties handed over land rights, governance rights, and labor rights, not to Belgium, not to any government, but to one private man. In 1885, the Berlin Conference concluded. 14 nations formally recognized the Congo Free State as the personal property of King Leopold II. The entire international community had just handed one man sovereign control over 900,000 square miles of land and its people, and had done it believing, or choosing to believe, that he was there to help. Once the world handed him the Congo, Leopold dropped the mask and revealed what he had always intended. For the first few years, the Congo was simply looted, ivory taken, land cleared, labor extracted at gunpoint. Then, in the early 1890s, the global demand for rubber exploded. Bicycle tires, industrial machinery,
The new industrial world needed rubber, and the Congo's forests were full of wild rubber vines. Leopold read the numbers and understood immediately what he had. He created a system of quotas. Every village in the Congo was assigned a monthly rubber harvest target. Meet the quota, and your village was left alone. Fail, and the force publique arrived. The force publique was Leopold's private army, African soldiers under Belgian officers. When a village came up short on rubber, they burned homes and took hostages, usually women, and held them until the men returned with enough rubber to satisfy the number. And to prove that bullets had been used in the field rather than wasted, soldiers were required to deliver physical proof of each kill. That proof was a severed human hand.
Baskets of hands were brought to Belgian officers as confirmation of duty. When a soldier missed a shot or needed to account for a bullet fired during training, hands were cut from living people. Children, the elderly. The practice became so systematic that missionaries began photographing the evidence. Stacks of severed hands, arranged on the ground in rows. One of the first people to understand what was happening from the outside was E.D. Morel, a British shipping clerk who noticed something that made no sense in the ledgers. Ships returning from the Congo carried rubber and ivory. Ships going to the Congo carried weapons and ammunition. No trade goods, no wages, no payment of any kind. This, Morel understood, was not commerce. This was extraction enforced by terror. This was not chaos. This was policy. And somewhere in Brussels, Leopold was reading the reports. By the early 1900s, enough testimony had escaped the Congo to reach newspapers in Europe and America. Missionaries wrote letters. Survivors gave accounts to anyone willing to listen. And in 1904, the British government dispatched its consul to investigate formally. His name was Roger Casement. Casement traveled through the Congo and documented what he found with the precision of a legal record. He spoke with survivors. He examined physical evidence. He counted the dead in villages that had once held hundreds of people. The report he submitted to the British Parliament in 1904 described a system of organized terror operating at an industrial scale. Forced labor, mass killings, deliberate starvation used as a management tool, and mutilation applied not as punishment, but as bureaucratic accounting. The historian Adam Hochschild, in his 1998 book, King Leopold's Ghost, estimated that between 1880 and 1920, the population of the Congo fell by approximately 10 million people. Some researchers put the number higher. Death came through multiple channels. Direct killing by the force publique. Starvation caused by villages forced to harvest rubber instead of growing food. And disease tearing through communities already broken by fear. What is hardest to absorb is this. Leopold knew. His own officials sent him detailed reports. His own correspondence, the portions that survived, shows a man who was fully aware of what his system produced. He was not a distant king deceived by subordinates. He read the figures. He adjusted the quotas. He continued. He never faced a tribunal. He never stood before a court. He sat in Brussels, watched the money arrive, and let it run for 20 years.
when the world finally began to see what had happened in the Congo, Leopold had one more card to play.
By 1908, international pressure had grown too loud to ignore. The Belgian parliament voted to strip Leopold of the Congo and convert it into an official Belgian colony. Before the transfer was complete, Leopold ordered the destruction of the Congo Free State's entire archive. His agents burned the financial records, the correspondence, the operational reports from the Force Publique. Leopold was reportedly direct about his reasoning. "I will give them my Congo," he said, "but they have no right to know what I did there." He died in December 1909, less than 2 years after the transfer. He was given a state funeral. Statues were erected in his honor across Belgium. For the better part of a century, he was remembered as a modernizer, a king who had built railways and funded public works using wealth brought home from Africa. Where that wealth came from was not examined in schools. It was not discussed in museums. The statues stood. It was not until 2020, during the global demonstrations following the murder of George Floyd, that Belgians began pulling those statues down. Some were removed by official order. Others were defaced and toppled by people who had grown tired of waiting for an official reckoning. Belgium's King Philippe issued a letter that year expressing his deepest regrets for the colonial period. Not a formal apology. Regrets. The Congo today, now the Democratic Republic of Congo, remains one of the most resource-rich and politically unstable countries on Earth. It holds some of the world's largest deposits of cobalt, the mineral used in the batteries of smartphones and electric vehicles. The extraction continues. The profits leave. The people remain. Leopold II never faced justice. His name still appears on buildings. Some of his statues still stand. And the history most of us were taught, if we were taught it at all, mentioned him as a footnote, a minor character in the larger story of European imperialism. 10 million people. Not a footnote. His story is not just about one greedy king. It is about every government, every diplomat, every newspaper editor, and every church official who knew what was happening and chose silence. Atrocities at this scale do not belong to one man. They belong to every institution that looked away. History tends to ask us, quietly, whether we would have been different. Most of us prefer not to sit with that question too long.